The walls of RCSI's historic boardroom on St. Stephen's Green in Dublin are adorned with portraits of men and women from RCSI history. All made notable contributions to the development of healthcare at home and abroad. But in a sea of surgeons and physicians, only one was a nurse, Mary Frances Crowley. On the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the RCSI Faculty of Nursing and Midwifery in 1974, we commemorate the life and legacy of its founding dean, Mary Frances Crowley. Mary Frances Crowley was born on August 1, 1906 in County Wexford. Like many other aspiring Irish nurses at the time, Crowley trained in England. She qualified as a registered nurse in 1935 and earned her midwifery certificate a year later.
Wasn't particularly tall, but she had a very imperious kind of stature. You couldn't miss her. If she walked into a room, you couldn't miss Auntie Maureen. She would stand out. And yet she had a gentle voice. She didn't have a strident voice or anything.
Crowley gained her clinical experience in hospitals around the northwest of England and in London, training other nurses along the way. She had natural leadership skills and honed these by availing of the continuing education opportunities open to registered nurses in Britain. Crowley's experience in England shaped her vision for the future of nursing and midwifery in Ireland. Unlike in Britain, post-registration education and development opportunities were very limited in Ireland in the 1940s and 1950s. Nurse training traditionally emphasized practical skills over theoretical knowledge. Nursing provided vital support for the work of physicians, but was not yet considered a healthcare profession in its own right. She believed that continuing education was essential for the development of nursing and midwifery as a recognized healthcare profession. Crowley returned to Ireland in 1941 and quickly set about making her vision a reality. She set up 2 new nurse training schools in the space of 4 years, the Medical Missionaries Midwifery Training School in Drogheda and a nurse training school at the Royal Victoria Eye and Ear Hospital in Dublin. In 1945, Crowley took a leave of absence to serve as matron of a new Irish Red Cross hospital in the town of Saint-Lô in Normandy, France. A strategic stronghold for German forces during the war, Saint-Lô was devastated by aerial bombing in the summer of 1944. The hospital rose from the ruins of the town, thanks in large part to Crowley's leadership skills and administrative experience. She was responsible for equipping the facilities from scratch, as well as the recruitment and rostering of over 30 nursing staff. Crowley and other members of hospital management later received the Medal of Gratitude from the French government in recognition of their humanitarian work in Saint-Lô. On her return to Ireland in 1947, Crowley continued to promote the professional development of nurses through higher education. She was a regular attendee at international nursing conferences and sat on many advisory associations and regulatory bodies. She established the Nurse Tutors Academic Society in 1960 and was heavily involved in the RCSI-affiliated Dublin Metropolitan Technical School for Nurses. Though the Dublin Metropolitan School closed in 1969, Crowley turned it to her advantage by increasing calls for the coordinated provision of higher education for registered nurses. In 1974, her ambition was realized with the establishment of a Faculty of Nursing at RCSI, the first of its kind in any British or Irish medical school. Crowley remained involved with the faculty until her retirement in 1980, developing new educational programs and promoting these to nurses around the island of Ireland. She was active in membership organizations such as the Irish Guild of Catholic Nurses until her death in 1990. And developed a keen interest in preserving and promoting the history of nursing in Ireland in later life. Crowley's was a life of service to the profession, to her peers, and ultimately to her patients.
I first met her when I was a young nurse, recently qualified, and I saw where there were courses going to be run in the RCSI. One was on ethics. So I applied and found out that Miss Crowley was running these programs, had developed them and was running diploma courses for nurses. And this was the first time that courses for nurses were taking place in Ireland. So this was in the early 70s. So I came every week for almost 5 years and took 6 diploma programs in physics, chemistry, microbiology, ethics, nursing, and this led to the fellowship. So I then took the fellowship examination, and I was privileged to be in the first group to receive the fellowship from the Faculty of Nursing.
For us, for people of my generation, and many people, I guess, of today's generation don't necessarily understand this, the immersion of nursing and midwifery in higher education is a relatively new phenomenon. And essentially in 2002, nursing education and midwifery education became fully immersed in higher education. So people of my generation trained in traditional hospital-based schools of nursing. And what was unique, I guess, at the time was many of my peers, and indeed some of the people who were before me, were all coming to RCSI. Because essentially in the 70s, and indeed in the 80s, it was de facto the only place you could engage in significant further and indeed higher education.
Miss Crowley had a vision for nursing, and this vision was that nurses would take their place amongst all healthcare professionals, that they would be responsible for the care that they were delivering, so they had to take this responsibility and be accountable, and that they would interweave nursing knowledge into good clinical practice. She always talked about her principles and the principles of delivering excellent care to patients, parents, to every group that nurses were working with.
You will not have nurses sitting in the highest level of decision making if there's no leadership to take that position. And that's what she did. She created in this country, in my opinion, I feel like permission. She created this permission for us to say, yeah, well, you know, nursing and midwives, they should be in higher education. It's the Isaac Newton thing. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. So what we've achieved in my generation, and you know, people who've worked with me since the 1980s, and have now moved on, we built on people like Dean Crowley. We built on their work. But I have to say, while you know, I consider what we do today really innovative and important, we wouldn't have had the capacity to do it if it wasn't for someone like Dean Crowley. I keep using the notion of fearless leadership because you had to be fearless, in my opinion, in the 70s. I trained in the 80s, so I know what it was like to be a nurse at the time. So 10 years beforehand, she was, I feel like, driving the agenda, the future agenda for nursing and midwifery. Whether she knew it or not, I don't know, but she was certainly driving the future agenda so early.